And welcome to the No Assembly Required podcast, a podcast where we talk about nothing and where we struggle in our feeble attempt to make YouTube fun again. And now your host. She is going to cut you if you act up, Romina from the block.
Don't scare them.
And now your second host. She is, in fact, our pop culture intern now, Audrey Ember, your third host. He is a complicated man who doesn't know what he wants but knows what he likes. Roberto Blake, welcome to the No Assembly Required podcast, filmed in front of a live YouTube audience. Thank you for joining. Please like and subscribe.
Wow, that got really intense. That was like was a mood. That was a mood.
We opened up with violently threatening our detractors. We scolded Audrey for not being born in the right decade, and then we explored my existential crisis.
Yeah, I mean, we went down the rabbit hole, but that's all right. We're out. Well, no, we're not out.
And we managed to go that far in just a minute and 25 seconds.
Wow, this is shaping up to be a regular Thursday night. Audrey, did you fix your headphones?
Yes.
You're wearing.
I got a new.
By
cable.
buying a new.
You got a new cable. So you didn't.
Yeah.
Fix it.
I borrowed like some of my brother's for a while, and then I just ordered a new cord. Thank God.
Oh. So for you guys who are listening, this is a life hack, which I'm surprised more people don't know, but I've been doing this for years. So when I buy a Bose headset, which I think I've had Bose headphones for 16 years now. I think I've been a loyal Bose user. And I think in that time, I think I've only bought 2 headphones. Because in between that time, anytime one of them broke. Yeah, well, I mean, I will say Bose used to have excellent customer service where I did call them once about my headphones and they immediately just sent me a replacement unit. No questions asked. And so I got brand new headphones that way. But in between that, I just buy the replacement parts, which are super cheap. And you Bose website or on Amazon or wherever. And it's pretty affordable compared to, buying new headphones.
Romina, I think you're frozen.
Romina's image is frozen. We can still hear her, though.
Oh, yeah. Everybody's image froze for a second, but it seems like we're all back.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. For me. I think it's a StreamYard thing, because when I looked on...
YouTube.
Oh, actually, I am frozen on YouTube now. Oh, well.
Right, you gonna pop out and pop in?
Yes. You guys can continue talking, for the sake of...
We'll count
keep it
on
going.
You to carry us through, Audrey. Audrey, what movies have you watched from your list in your adventures in pop culture?
I watched Mission Impossible a couple days ago, and then I've been going off the list because I'm doing research for a video right now, and I have to watch.
Can you tease it? Can you?
I don't know.
Romina, your screen's black, so we need you.
Yeah, I'm looking on the live.
What's going on?
Right on.
Yeah, I don't know if I mean, I don't. It's not a secret. I'm watching Wes Anderson movies.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
What'd you watch from Wes Anderson recently?
I watched. I need to look at my list. I watched 2 of them.
Grand Budapest Hotel.
Yes, I watched that one.
Rushmore.
Yes.
Ooh.
Royal Tenenbaums.
No.
Rushmore is good. In my opinion, it's good.
Oh, was it Moonrise Kingdom?
Yes. And there's one more I watched.
What'd you think
Fantastic
about
Mr. Fox.
No.
What'd you think about Rushmore?
Isle of Dogs.
No. The Life Aquatic.
I just said Life Aquatic.
You did?
I didn't hear
Oh,
that.
I didn't hear you say that.
It
You
was
said
right.
something else.
It was like in between Roberto saying, "What did you think about Rushmore?"
Yeah, what'd you think about Rushmore?
I liked Rushmore.
Yeah, but what'd you think about it?
Wow. She always does this, Roberto. Why did you learn? She just says, "Oh, I liked it."
I'm starting to get them mixed up because I literally watched them like one after the other. But Rushmore, I feel like Rushmore was the first one where it was the second one I watched. And that's when I started to really notice like all the things that Wes Anderson does, especially when it comes to characters. There's something like kind of awkward about his characters. It's like, it's very, like, I feel like it's purposefully awkward a lot of the time with his characters, which I thought was
J.J. Abrams is kind of like that too, but J.J. Abrams has a lot of different things that show up in like all of his work. And he also he has this habit of wanting to always use the same people. He always, in everything that J.J. Abrams does, he always uses, and I have nothing against this, he always uses Greg Grunberg and Kerry Russell in anything he can possibly get them in. I swear to God.
I can tell you why that is. It's because when you make a movie, you're usually stuck with these people for at least 20 days minimum. So if you're going to be working with someone day in and day out for an entire month or more, yeah, exactly. You might as well be doing it with your friends, which is why Tim Burton, Martin Scorsese, this is why all these people use the same people, because they can, because they've gotten to the point where they can just say, oh, I want to put this guy in my movie.
So a lot of people say it's clickiness and it's elitism and it's nepotism, and really what it is just like, no, I can't tolerate people but so long. And these are the people that I've acquired a taste for.
Well, here's the other thing too. When we're talking about being on set, efficiency is key, right? We want people who are going to show up to set and know their lines and hit their marks, right?
So proven reliability, good track record,
right?
Good reputation.
But beyond that, stylistically speaking, if you bring someone new to the table, who may have just seen like Wes Anderson movies.
You gotta learn their new quirks, and you gotta
learn all
of that, and that's a bottleneck, and that's a learning curve, and that's time you don't have if things go sideways. I agree.
Yeah, exactly. So this is why, and I do get a little bit tired of that kind of thing. I like it when directors kind of branch out. Someone who does that is Danny Boyle. He's very stylistic in the fact that you watch his movies and you can tell you're watching a Danny Boyle film, but they're each so distinct, and he uses different cast members. He typically uses the same cinematographer and sometimes the same screenwriter, but on camera he uses different crew. I think Cillian Murphy, he's worked with him twice, 28 Days Later and Sunshine. But I think it's outside from that. I don't know, but I can't think of anybody else that he's worked with.
Here's why I believe that's part of here's why I believe that's one of the symptoms of why Hollywood and traditional media will die to new media. Hollywood and old media, they have all this absurd money. They have more money than the Vatican at this point, right? And yet they refuse to take any risk. And we know that the market and we know that risk are rewarded in life. And they refuse to take risk. They keep rehashing old intellectual property and trying to milk the nostalgia boner to death. And like it's like, you know, it's gotten freaking ridiculous. And they also keep using and recycling the same people over and over and over again. Because they want to use these names to attract people. Because why? They have no faith in the actual stories that they're telling. They have no faith in the idea of introducing something refreshing and vibrant. So they have to go back to the well of literally milking nostalgia, milking fairy tales, milking proven old intellectual property, because they're all effing cowards who risk nothing, but they want to gain everything.
I don't like the word milking now.
The roast.
Yeah, they risk nothing but want to gain everything in profitability. And I think it's stupid. I think it's ignorant, and I think it's lazy AF. And I think what they should do is go back to doing it like we used to do back in the day. And what they need to do is they need to get some freaking attractive enough but very talented freaking theater actors that will do things on the cheap or for no pay at all, and like trot them out and tell an epic story and put everything into crafting and writing and doing the damn treatment and going over it and shooting their heart out and making compelling, thoughtful stories that can be a new thing that belongs to a generation that didn't borrow from what came before. And I think that the reason they don't do that, because the thing is, they could do it and save a crap ton of money out of all the profits that they make from recycling all this this BS and trotting out things for nostalgia points. And then the only reason the reason it makes so much money is because of all the angry nerds on the internet that go and watch it 5 times so they can bitch about it on YouTube and make their money back. And so that's the business model here. And I think it just shows that they're a bunch of cowards.
Dang.
I'm sorry I feel so passionately about this.
No, it's great. I mean, I on the one hand, I do agree with everything you just said, but I also feel like there's no point in trying to change that beast. I feel like there's
that's why I think old media will die to new media.
I don't know about dying.
Yeah, I think that what will happen is just it creates a separate it creates a separate market. So right now there already exists websites, streaming services where you can watch independent films, and not just independent films, but just films that are art house cinema, so films that have compelling stories and are creative. And you can watch those right now. Like they're accessible, and people do watch them. I think it's just a different market than the same people, or it might be an aside from that, just like I enjoy going to the movies and seeing these popcorn films, but then I also enjoy watching stuff like that.
The thing that I would change about the YouTube Originals initiative that I think that Susan Wojcicki and the folks at YouTube could have done better on, and this is no shade at Susan Wojcicki, I actually end up defending her quite regularly because nobody bothers to do any research, and that's where my criticism of their criticism comes in, is I don't think she's a remotely a bad CEO, to be honest. But here's the issue I have. I would have, with the YouTube Originals initiative, would have specifically put more money into letting homegrown content creators with a fan base make their dream project with some, cinema-esque budgets. And I think it would have been more successful because they would have had vested interest in driving the subscriptions to the Originals platform for that, and having those YouTube exclusives and having the fan base pay for access to it. And the thing is, fans would have done it because the YouTube community keeps talking so much about support homegrown creators over old media, support homegrown. All right, we're willing to do that, but we're asking you to support it and support it with your wallet and not just your eyeballs. So pony up, or don't bitch at us about not supporting our homegrown talent if you're not going to do it. We put in money. How about you? And I would have called the community out on it, to be honest with you. And I feel that the thing that would work about it is YouTubers got where they are by taking risk and experimenting and creating their own thing and giving a generation like the generation that Audrey grew up in their own thing.
Yeah. Wait. Sorry, I'm just distracted. What is this thing at the bottom?
It's a ticker.
Yeah,
You've never seen a ticker before? What's the matter with you?
Apparently StreamYard has all these cool things that we don't take advantage of.
I'm taking advantage of them right now, Roberto. Don't you dare say we're not taking advantage of them. We're doing it right now.
Completely sidetracked by.
How dare you?
No, but here's the thing. I think that's a really fun idea, Roberto. Can you imagine if some of these large, cool creators got big budgets for projects? My mind immediately jumped to Peter McKinnon. What if they gave him a huge budget
Devin
to make a really cool
Peter
film?
McKinnon, Devin Supertramp, Lindsey Sterling. Give them budgets. Back in the day, YouTube did a couple of these grants, and that's where SciShow and Crash Course came from.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
They were the only profitable. By the way, they were the only profitable initiatives out of YouTube's grant investment in creators back in the early days of YouTube. Everybody else blew the money and it was no return on investment, no ROI. They blew the money or they paid themselves. And so YouTube handed out money and wrote checks to its creators. and all the projects tanked or failed, and a lot of those channels don't exist anymore. A lot of those creators have moved on. But
R.I.P.
Hank and John Green's Crash Course and wait, what it Romina?
Oh, I said R.I.P.
Yeah, R.I.P. Pour one out for him. Pour one out for the YouTubers.
I'm not pouring out my tea for anybody.
But the the two that were profitable. I heard this, by the way, from a former YouTube employee. The only two that were profitable were SciShow and Crash Course, which is John and Hank Green's two education-based initiatives. And as we all know, both SciShow and Crash Course have had multiple spin-offs now. And, Hank Green basically runs an empire. He
I think Crash Course is what helped me graduate from high school. Get through bio.
Right.
Very grateful
I'm sure
for
you're not
Crash
the only
Course.
one. I'm
No,
sure you're not the only one. I would have probably got better grades.
I'm not the only
I probably
one.
would have got better grades if it existed. But
Literally
on the
everyone
other hand,
I know used
other
Crash
hand,
Course.
yeah, on the other hand, if YouTube existed, I might have done like my my homie Jade Dharmawangsa, and maybe I would have just dropped out of high school. I'm not advocating for dropping out of high school, by the way, but because not everyone can drop not everyone can drop out of high school and then become a successful multiple six-figure entrepreneur.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I do, Roberto.
But I think your odds are better of dropping out of college like somebody and doing that. But if you learn skills.
Yeah, you gotta learn those skills, man. You gotta learn those skills. What do you?
We don't need another Roberto rant, so I'll just leave that alone. We'll save that.
Now, Audrey, how do you feel about Disney remakes?
She would have.
I'm asking you because
she would have had to have watched the originals.
Okay, that's why I'm asking her, Roberto. There's a very specific reason why I said Audrey and not Roberto.
I think it's fine, but like, I don't know. I think if you remake it once, okay. I think there has to be a really big period of time in between them.
Is 30 years enough time?
Yes.
How about 15? How about 20 years?
Yeah, it's okay. But like sometimes it's just too like similar to the original. Like I feel like if you're gonna make a remake, at least put some sort of different twist on it, And most of them do, but I don't know. It still feels like too. Like a good example would be Little Women. Like I loved how they put a twist on that new one.
Okay, but going back to Disney, have you seen any of their remakes that they've made in the past few years that are the animation?
Saw the Lion King.
Okay, so Lion King,
new one.
But you saw the original one.
Well, yeah, I've seen the original.
Okay, so Roberto almost had. I think he had a heart attack, but it was a very small one.
Like I thought it was kind of cool, but they didn't change the story. Like the story was the same.
They didn't expand.
Just the animals were
My thing
supposed
is, you don't have to
real.
change something; you have to expand on it.
Yeah, and I don't know. I felt like it was like the only thing that really changed was the style.
Like we got to play with technology. Realistic. That's not a good enough excuse for me.
No, it's not. It's like they should have done something more interesting.
What do you think?
I don't know.
What do you think about sequels? What are you guys' rules for sequels of old franchises where you're like, okay, years and years after the fact, like Star Wars, for example, like years and years after the fact, we're gonna add to the lore and we're gonna do a sequel.
I like sequels.
I think it depends on what it is. So for instance, like something like a franchise, I feel like with Star Wars and Star Trek, they're just so much bigger than what it is anymore.
With Star Trek and Star Wars, I think they have a whole damn universe. They should expand. Stop milking the characters that everyone knows and loves. Like kill them, as far as I'm concerned. But
I think they're working on it, but they gotta just.
Why don't we get
part
a Star
of it
Trek
is brand
movie?
recognition, right?
Why don't we get a Star Trek movie that like we reference Spock and we reference Kirk, but why can't we just have something about the damn Vulcans? Why can't we just have a Vulcan movie?
I agree. I do agree.
Why can't we just have fuck Spock? Sorry.
Wow.
I love Spock, but you know what I mean.
Wow.
You know what I mean. It's like, no.
No. I
Romina.
understand. I understand what you're saying. I get what you're saying. I think the reason why is, again, for brand recognition, because they knew that the people who would be going to see Star Wars were a large audience, was going to be people like you and I who grew up watching the films, the original ones, and would then be either going for nostalgia reasons or to introduce it to our children, to introduce it to a new generation.
The success of Rogue One belies that, and even the success of the prequels belies that.
Yeah, and I'm not negating it. I'm just saying the only reason why they keep bringing old characters back is for that reason, is to keep both audiences happy.
The most iconic thing about the Star Wars prequels that now has its own like thing today is Darth freaking Maul, which proves that you don't need to, like, no one gives a crap and no one waxes poetically about Obi-Wan.
Audrey, do you know who Darth Maul is?
In the Star Wars prequel, like, she's not a Star Wars person yet. We haven't converted her to the Church.
It's all right. I'm gonna make her a Star Trek person.
No.
What?
No.
What was that?
Your feeble Trek is no match for the powers of the dark side.
Wow. All right. Well,
your feeble Federation will suffer the same as the rebellion.
Roberto, have you seen any of the? I don't even know if I've seen. I don't remember seeing any of the remakes, like the Beauty and the Beast. Other ones?
No, I saw the. Here's the thing: they did put some interesting things in Beauty and the Beast, but they also were too on the nose with some other things, and they did too much.
Beauty and the Abyss.
Beauty and the Beast was okay. The remake of Beauty and the Beast was okay, but they were way too on the nose with some things, and they were way too. Whether they meant to or not, they somewhat politicized aspects of that movie, whether they meant to or not. And so they did the same thing with the sequel to Maleficent, which annoyed me. They did too much social commentary within
I don't like that.
Yeah, because there's a way the film itself.
The
story of Beauty and the Beast itself is social commentary, but we should stick to the social commentary that it is, and we should have expanded on the social commentary that Beauty and the Beast is. Not judging a book by its cover, appearances can be deceiving. Judge people by their character.
And Stockholm syndrome is a real thing.
Stockholm syndrome is a real thing. But also the nature of bigotry was overt in the original story and in the animation. And the thing is, we could go there. And mob mentality was represented. You really didn't need, there was no need to do any kind of virtue signaling in this film if you just stick to the original story, because there's enough merit in it, in the themes that it has about the concepts of fairness and bigotry and justice and character. They should have just stuck with that. But I did like the story elements that they expanded on with regard to some of the magic in the film.
Yeah.
And also the backstory of Belle's mother being given more. And also I feel that we got more character development out of the servants, but I also think narratively doing a little bit more with the sorceress was cool too, and I feel like those things could have been given 15 more minutes of screen time if they stopped virtue signaling for a couple of minutes. So,
dang.
So yeah, I don't think anyone loves woke Disney right now. I don't hate Disney though.
Woke Disney.
I don't hate Disney, and I think there's a lot that they do that's good right now, and I think there's a lot of really strong stuff that they're doing. But I think ever so often you have people that want to sneak things under the radar. But we had a different problem in the 80s and 90s with people sneaking inappropriate things under the radar. So if the difference is dirty Disney or racist Disney versus woke Disney, I guess I'll stick with woke Disney.
Yeah.
Because we have racist Disney that snuck under the radar for decades. Then we had dirty Disney that snuck under the radar for a while. And now,
dirty Disney.
Yeah, so
the alliteration.
Racist Disney, dirty Disney.
I didn't know you
Disney,
were such a poet.
And woke Disney, then I'm a poet and I don't know it. Like, then I guess that the lesser of three evils
no.
at this point, I mean, I don't know if the chat agrees with me. The lesser of three evils is probably woke Disney at this point.
Yeah. All right,
I
guys.
think we can agree on that.
If you like hashtag woke Disney, if you agree with anything Roberto just said, give the stream a thumbs up. And if you're listening to us, then don't forget to rate us on whatever podcast system you are on. Platform, whatever podcast platform you use. Don't forget to, follow
Leave us
us,
a review.
subscribe, leave us a review,
And just rate
us. And just write woke Disney, and we'll know that you are here. Yeah, we really appreciate you guys who are in the chat right now, hanging out with us, and those of you who are listening as well. It actually means the world to us because this is us. This is our normal. We aren't putting on a show for you guys. This is literally us every time we get together. This is our conversations, except usually they last 3 to 5 hours longer. But for the sake of everyone's sanity, we try to cut it short at about the 1 hour-ish mark.
Ish.
Keyword.
Yeah, and the difference is this time I'm not stuffing pizza down my throat.
Yeah, no, I mean, this time Audrey has ice cream and I'm eating this little pastry thing. So we're doing the eating for you, Roberto.
It's literally, what's funny? It's like, it's a running gag. I think it's like every time, and it's like, it's a running gag that he's brought up before. So every time I run into Casey Neistat, I'm always like eating something. I'm always stuffing my face. Like whenever we hang out, it's usually me gorging myself on whatever amazing food is at the place that we're at. And it's like, it's this running, recurring theme in our relationship. It's like, because remember, like the first time I was at 368, it's literally there's this, I forgot the name of this place, but it's like this family pizza joint that makes like the best pizza. It's like real New York pizza. Like the people who've ever had real New York pizza know what I'm talking about. And so I'm just like on slice number 5. While Casey's like, trying to talk to me, and I'm just like, oh, this is so good.
Here's the real question: New York or Chicago pizza?
So I've been to Chicago, believe it or not.
They're different.
And they are different.
That was
but I'm a Brooklyn
answer.
boy. I'm a Brooklyn boy. But I will give Chicago its hot dogs. I will give Chicago its hot dogs.
A what?
I will give Chicago its hot dogs. But you don't mess with New York pizza. Connor asked.
I've had New York pizza.
Connor asked, "Am I going to eat while surfing with him?" No. So when we do the surfing thing, which I hope we vlog because it literally might be my funeral. So when we go surfing, I'm not going to eat because I'm going to try not to die. And I already have this really paranoid thing about surfing and everything like that. And so that's kind of where this all the ways that you can die. You realize how many ways you can actually die surfing? It's kind of absurd. It's kind
I went surfing recently and I had no one teaching me. So literally I just went with the board.
You do crazy things. You do crazy things.
But literally, I got sucked under at some point, and I did 3 flips.
See,
and
that's why I'm paranoid. See,
you
why
just
I'm
kind
paranoid?
of accept it though, and you just go with it, and then
accept my death? No,
no.
Accept my fate. I guess this is what happened to me. I made poor choices.
I will say, if you notice, Cameron Diaz has had plastic surgery on her nose because she's actually broken her nose 3 times from surfing.
Surfing?
Yeah.
Dang.
You see? I'm not wrong. I'm not wrong.
What if you fell and then got whacked by your board? That's what
that's what I'm talking about.
That's why when you fall, you do the ball.
Guys, I have a great story. So, Dick Van Dyke?
Yes.
Well, some of us
Audrey doesn't.
I recognize the name.
Okay, Dick Van Dyke. He's an actor, funny guy, old guy. He's in his 80s, right?
And was formerly the president of Nick at Night.
So, Dick Van Dyke This guy.
The Dick Van Dyke Show starring Dick Van Dyke.
He was in, I think, so he was in like maybe his 70s or something like that when this happened. He claims he was on his surfboard or his paddleboard. I don't know which of the two, but he was on one of those boards on the ocean, and he was laying down on it when he fell asleep on the board. And the board drifted out into open water far enough from the shore where he wouldn't be able to swim back. So he was stuck on the board when he woke up in the middle of the ocean. And he says that a pod of porpoises came up to the board and pushed the board back close enough for him to swim back to shore.
You know what the first red flag of that story is? Falling asleep on your surfboard. It's not the most comfortable thing on the planet. Like, how do you fall
70
asleep
years old.
enough to
70 years old.
Yeah, you wouldn't believe it. Audrey, like if you just lay in the sun long enough, you'll fall asleep.
Yeah, but surfboards, like, unless he has a huge, like, you can't really just...
Have you ever been on a paddleboard?
Yeah, well, that's a different story. Was it a paddleboard?
It was either... That's what I said at the beginning. I didn't know if it was a surfboard or a paddleboard. It was one of the two.
It's probably a paddleboard.
It's probably paddleboard. If he was.
I have no reason to doubt that story. And dolphins are sentient. They just don't have the capacity to make tools. If
and why would they do that?
Because they're kind and they're like there's.
Why would they do? Audrey's like,
because
old
dolphins
man
are better
drifting
people.
out to sea. Let him drown.
Dolphins are better people than us. That's why. It's because dolphins are better people than us, because dolphins are actually people. Dolphins are sentient beings, so they should be classified as people. They're just non-human people. And dolphins are better than us. So there.
I love
they might just be like, maybe he was just taking a nap. So why should they put him back intelligent?
Dolphins are intelligent, sentient, and self-aware, and they are capable of like selflessness, kindness, and they feel emotions, and we've done the test to know that they can interpret the emotional spectrum. So they can sense fear, and dogs can sense fear, and dogs know how to be kind and give you things that you need and how to help you and to rescue you from fires and stuff like that. I have no reason to believe that dolphins wouldn't help him. So, because they're better than us.
Wow.
This is a hill I will die on. Dolphins are better people than people.
I think what you want to say is that dolphins are better people than Audrey. Because clearly, she sees an old man floating away.
Said. I just doubted.
And she's like, why are we going to help him?
No, I was saying that's what dolphins would think. Help me.
Let him drown. He's expendable.
Maybe he's napping. No.
If he got himself in this mess, he can get himself out. That's Audrey. That's Audrey right there, guys. For those of you who are listening.
Audrey would be the dolphin in the pod that'd be like, Darwin at work. She'd be like, Darwin at work here. Let nature have its way. Like, circle of life.
Wow.
Like, it's like, sink or swim, Sonny.
Wow. Sink or swim, Sonny.
Yeah, it's like...
That's Audrey.
No.
I'm going to get you a t-shirt that says that, Audrey.
Great.
Sink or
I'll
swim,
wear it in
Sonny.
a podcast.
Yeah.
Like, stay out of our oceans, homie.
Probably what they're saying now. Hey, you know what I was thinking the other day?
Saying.
The other day I was thinking, good news, everybody.
Is this dolphin related?
That was a reference for Futurama. It's alright. It's fine.
Good news, everyone. I've doomed us all. Rejoice.
No, but really, this is really good news. So I was thinking the other day.
would make a good Professor Farnsworth, though.
I was thinking 2 days ago, I was thinking, you know what? Really good news is that the stats for the amount of shark attacks and shark deaths this year are going to be the lowest they've ever been.
Because no one's going swimming?
Because no one's going swimming.
Well, while all this craziness has gone on, it's been great for the environment. Carbon emissions massively down. massively. Entire lakes and stuff like that cleared up. Like, I mean, you'd be shocked at how much the environment recovered with us just taking 2 months off from not being douchebags. Like, that's, I mean, Mother Nature just breathed a a breath of fresh air. You know, for the Final Fantasy VII fans out there and everything like that. I mean, I'm not being a crazy eco nut or anything like that, but you have to wonder if you played Final Fantasy VII. It's like, how's the live stream if like our planet is like Gaia in Final Fantasy VII? It's like, how's the live stream not just reach up and just backhand us and put us in our place sometimes? Like, you got to think.
Yeah.
As Mother Earth, I'm wondering if there's like some sleeping titans in the earth, the sea, and in a volcano that's just gonna come up one day and be like, "Get wrecked, son. Get wrecked, son." For real though. Like, you have to wonder. I mean, if I write a sci-fi film, it's literally going to be something like Sleeping Giants or something like that, or Rise of the Titans or something like that, and it's literally someone's going to have the line of we deserve this, or it's something like that.
Yeah. I mean, we can only hope.
Wait, for a doomsday event facilitated by Mother Earth taking its revenge on its wayward children? Wait, actually, that sounds amazing. Thematically,
yeah.
Thematically, yeah. Mother Earth taking her revenge on her wayward children. Jeez, man, that's just
Isn't that already happening?
For the sins of their fathers. Oh. Mother Earth taking revenge on her wayward children.
I mean, I don't know.
This summer, watch an epic thrill ride as Mother Nature takes revenge on her wayward children for the sins of their fathers.
Yeah, for people like Audrey who let old men drift off into the open water.
Excuse me, I never said that.
So. That's gonna be a thing now, Audrey.
Oh my god,
that's your thing.
Cool.
All right. Well, I mean, should we talk about the topic at hand?
Yes, please do. Because while we do that, I'm just going to be writing the script in my head, by the way. So
we're in the middle of a podcast right now.
Yeah, carry on.
All right. There is no such thing as multitasking.
Says my ADHD would beg to differ.
So small people attack big minds. The reason that this has come up is, well, first of all, this comes up a lot during our conversations and our text messages.
Shade? Are you shading someone, Romina?
I would never. I would never. Unlike you, I am like a porpoise. I am a good person. I am a good porpoise.
Okay.
No, I think, okay. Well, I think this comes up often, not only in our conversations, but also in our text message group chats and all of that stuff. It's just something that comes up a lot, which is small people attack big minds.
Mm-hmm.
And to expand on that further, Roberto actually said this, I think it was 3 weeks ago. I think he said those exact words. And I think they kind of stuck with me just because it was such a concise way of delivering our perpetual message. Yeah. But I think, it's just that in common, we know a couple people who are like that, who they find something wrong with anything that either of us put out, even if it's something positive and helpful towards the community, or that contributes to something that's much bigger, something at large. And
yes.
I think this kind of thing, I mean, it's not, at least for myself, I don't feel discouraged by it when I encounter people like this. But more than anything, I feel disappointed because frustrated. I definitely feel like, I mean, in part, I feel frustrated on my end because I feel, well, is it because I didn't communicate my message clear enough? So that's the first thing I always tackle. Doesn't matter who's talking to me or who comments or what they say.
I do the same thing.
I always look back at what I wrote and I say, did I actually communicate this in a way that is either like concise or very clear? Was my message lost in the communication? When I've established that either there was a little bit of leeway, maybe I wasn't very clear, maybe I was being ambiguous, then I engage in conversation with the person and I kind of just, allow them to play devil's advocate and I have an intellectual conversation with someone. But when I feel like my message was very clear and a person continuously finds something wrong with my message, then obviously my message is not the problem.
Sometimes people just search for like the negative or the, bad aspect of something, even when it's reaching.
Yeah.
We have a current cultural era that's not predicated on age alone. It's really just the vibe that we have at this current point in time where
Rage culture?
Yes, well that's a symptom. Well, that's a symptom of rage culture, outrage culture are all part of a toxic and pervasive mindset. It's really a sickness at this point. The victim mentality or the culture of victimhood manifests itself through these different things. And people don't like me saying that, and people feel offended or that like, oh, you're attacking this group or that group or me personally, or it's like no, it's that when you have a situation where people themselves, because of all of our admittedly systemic problems, people adopt a philosophy of despair. And anyone who has a philosophy of despair has a broken decision-making framework or decision-making rubric, because you're always operating from a place of pain or anger or desperation. It's why philosophically in Star Wars they talk about the dark side, and Yoda said eloquently, fear leads to anger, anger leads to hatred, hatred leads to suffering. And where does fear come from? Fear of what? Fear of loss, fear of pain, the sense of hopelessness. And where does that come from? A philosophy of despair. Fear can't exist where you also have an abundance. Like an abundance of fear is a scarcity of hope. An abundance of fear is a scarcity of hope. It's a scarcity of faith. It's a scarcity of confidence. So people who are fearful are lacking in things that build strength. And it's not to call them bad people or immoral, but they're lacking in certain character aspects or character development things that produce strong people. And people will say, well, what do you mean by strong people, and are you calling them weak? Well, when I say strong, I mean resilient. I mean the capacity to endure suffering with grace and not lash out.
Yeah.
And so
Michael
everything
in the
else
chat,
manifests from that.
Michael in the chat says, I totally agree. Nobody likes to take accountability for their actions and the fact that we are in control for good or bad. And Andrew also says, I agree with this 1,000%. Systems in our society are broken, but what are you going to do to make the situation better? And that's really what it comes down to, right? Where you have found what the problem is, and instead of choosing to continually complain about it and act like you are the victim, you instead try to find a solution or a path to change the problem, to fix the problem.
Yeah.
And therein lies the distinction between someone who is going to succeed and someone who is, oh man, this goes perfect with that quote that I sent you guys earlier today from the book. I'm gonna pull it up while you guys talk about.
I also think like social media makes it worse, right?
Yes.
Because if these people like have that mindset and then they kind of like project it onto people who are,
yes,
you know,
they also, it's a
doing
rallying
something
cry. They also have a rallying cry so that they can outshout people who disagree with them.
Yeah.
And that's more of mob mentality, and it's reinforcement of this broken belief system, this broken philosophy of despair that people have. And I call it a philosophy of despair because, like, I mean, that's more tactful than the other ways that I can phrase it, frankly. And it's very accurate if you think about it, because your philosophy, your worldview, the lens through which you view the world, it governs and dictates your actions because it governs how you interpret things. That's why in Star Wars they keep using the phrase, well, from a certain point of view. And so when your point of view is compromised by things like fear, anger, hatred, then you lose objectivity, and you lose the ability to act in a realistic or responsible way. And in many cases, everything you do is a disproportionate reaction to the circumstances. And in fact, you're being reactive, which means you're being driven by something instead of retaining control. And control is your responsibility, is where you're being responsible and you're being thoughtful. It's why in Star Wars, they also constantly use the phrase, be mindful. Even the Emperor gave instructions to Darth Maul in The Phantom Menace. He said, Lord Maul, be mindful. He was like cautioning him to say, don't be overconfident. Don't underestimate our opponents here. This is a tension-based situation. What did Maul do? Maul wasn't mindful. He let his arrogance blind him.
How many times have you mentioned Star Wars in this
But it's
episode?
So many
because
Star Wars
is a philosophy.
Today.
But Star Wars is an allegory for the consequences of a broken philosophy. Even the Jedi had to suffer the consequences for the flaws in their philosophy.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the point that I wanted to tie your experience to, Romina, is that the problem with people with small minds is they have a very narrow scope and a very rigid and inflexible philosophy that hasn't even served them well. And they attack people who have a broader perspective, a broader philosophy that includes room for growth and room for abundance, and they reject that because it's unfamiliar to them, and they have contempt for it because of envy. And so they dismiss someone's philosophy that isn't on the struggle bus with them as privilege, and they use and weaponize that word and misuse and abuse that word privilege to be dismissive of a philosophy that exists outside of their suffering, because they refuse to acknowledge that a reality exists outside their suffering.
So the quote that I have is, it's from the book, The One-Page Marketing Plan. And so the quote is, and I'm just going to read parts of it because it's actually very long. The top 20% own about 80% of the wealth in the world. So that's just a fact. In this section of the book, we're talking about the 80-20 rule, right? So this is despite this being the information age. You'd imagine that 100 years ago, only the wealthy had good access to information. Hence, it's understandable why they held 80% of the wealth. Yet this wealth distribution statistic still holds up today, an age where information has been democratized and where even the poorest people have pretty much the same access to information as the wealthiest people. This proves that lack of information isn't the issue holding back the bottom 80% of business owners. It's human behavior and mindset, and that certainly hasn't changed in the last 100 years.
Well, the counter argument that they would make, the people with a victim mentality or the people fighting for, let's say, not to super politicize this, but the people who advocate for socialism in the 21st century, the absurdity of that, they would argue that it's a resource issue, not a knowledge issue. They would argue that they need the people who have power and leverage to give it to them because they have none, because they haven't earned it.
Knowledge is a resource.
And they would want, right, but they don't acknowledge that. They don't acknowledge that because they don't feel that they can put it to use without having capital. You'll hear the argument, well, I don't have capital. It's like, you realize how many people did something without capital, but they'll
Without
throw
capital,
against you.
yeah.
They'll throw against you then all the people who didn't have capital, who couldn't make an idea work, or all the failures and everything like that. And they won't acknowledge that those people were just effing incompetent.
Right. And this actually brings in a good point that Andrew...
Not everyone who's tall plays basketball well because they don't have the competency. The
Andrew in the chat, he says, the thing is that it isn't socially acceptable to not be a victim when you're down.
That's true.
Which is very true. Like, I have often mentioned this publicly on my Twitter, where I have felt like I couldn't say certain things because I feel like I'm in the minority in that regard, for certain viewpoints, where if I say certain things, I'll suddenly become the villain. Where really, I think it's just a matter of the message being misconstrued to be, it's virtue signaling is what it comes down to.
In a world where everyone's going to virtue signal, I'll happily be the villain. I will be Darth Roberto. I will be your Lord Sith Emperor. I won't be given a choice. If we're going to move the goalpost for virtue and righteousness and what is good so ridiculously far, I'll have no choice in being a villain by being the reasonable person in the room and being the damn adult.
Will be the reasonable.
By the way, the adult, the educated adult, the elder, is cast as the villain by the young, naive, and arrogant youth who thinks that they have it all figured out. And think about it. We cast our parents in the role of villain when we're young. Oh, we want what we want, and it'll make us feel good. And what makes us feel good is therefore right and just. And our parents, for punishing us and holding us accountable and making us responsible, are therefore the villain, or they don't love us enough, or they're being unfair, or they're being unreasonable, or they don't understand, or they forgot what it's like to be young, or they forgot where they came from. We demonize and we dismiss our parents as being privileged by the virtue of the fact that they simply managed to exist and not die longer than we have. And we disregard all of the abundance of the wisdom that allows someone to actually live to adulthood as unfairness and injustice with our indignant outrage in our naive and arrogant youth. And then if we're lucky enough and we live long enough and our parents are still around, we grovel and we apologize and we tell them how damn grateful we are. You know, assuming that you're not, assuming you're not trash. So,
Audrey, what would you say to someone who has victim mentality? Let's say you told someone advice and they said that. And they said something that made them just look like the victim. How would you help them?
I mean, I think it's kind of frustrating. It's hard because you don't want to be too frank with them, but at the same time, I feel like a lot of those people sometimes, when it's coming from like they're playing the victim card for no reason, is you kind of have to like try and snap them out of it a little bit. Just be like, hey, stop messing around, or if they have like specific examples, stop messing around. No, but like sometimes they have specific examples of things that are holding them back or something. And I found like in the past, I've tried to like give advice on like what they could do to use that situation or whatever to their advantage and kind of like work with it. But often I think when people are already kind of in that mindset, it's hard for them to just work out of it. I think it takes a while to,
but there has to come a point when they do. I mean,
I would hope so.
No, the thing is, people like that think that if you just give them a chance and you say, I'm going to give you a leg up and I'm going to rescue you from these circumstances, and then they think, okay, then I'll do it. If you just solve this problem for me, you just pay my bills, pay my rent, or if I just had a year to do things my own way without having to worry about survival, I would be fine and everything. They have this delusion that that's true, and that because they want that, or because that's what would save them, that they should be given that without having to make any sacrifices or without having to earn it or without it being a consequence of their actions or their choices. And because it would be so nice for them if it were that way. And if someone has it and it won't hurt them to give it to them, then they should, or they're withholding from me that which would better my life, and therefore they're immoral. That is how they cast other people in the vein of the villain, so that they can be the victim and they can be virtuous. And that's why they'll look at someone like Jeff Bezos or Mark Zuckerberg or Bill Gates or Steve Jobs or Elon Musk or whoever in that light. Is, you have so much and I have nothing, and it would mean nothing to your life and everything to mine. You should give that up to me, even though I've done nothing to merit and earn it, because I deserve it by virtue of existing. And that is ridiculous. And that is ridiculous. Because it means that it didn't come by a natural, if it did not come by a consequence of a natural consequence, then it's something that you didn't earn. And if you think for 1 minute that you can hold or grow power that on some level wasn't earned, and then people will go, well, what about the people born into privilege? Do you realize how many of them screw it up? And do you realize that it's just that they can't run out the clock on the Head Start that gives them? Sure. But the thing is, the merit was paid forward because of the absurd amount of contribution that the people who came before them made. I'm sorry that somebody in your bloodline didn't do that for you. And me neither, by the way. That being said, the answer is that because here's the thing. It's not a resource issue. Because if it was, Romina, you can pull the data. Why is it that 90-something% of the people who win the lottery die in poverty, and in fact they exacerbate or accelerate their roll to the graveyard, given this abundance of resources? Why? They have no knowledge of how to wield it, because they didn't earn it and acquire it on their own, and they have no ability how to manage it properly, and they arrogantly think they can, and they don't take the steps to become educated.
Yeah. Because there is no value to their life aside from the dollar amount that they've decided is their value. Because I feel like it's the same as when you go with happiness, right? Just on basic factors. It's nothing to do with like success or your business or anything like that. If you aren't happy now, then the thing you think is going to make you happy is probably not going to make you happy.
If you're unhappy single, how do you think you're going to be happy being in a relationship?
Right.
You know, if you're not giving enough love to yourself, how are you going to give it enough to someone else?
Dang.
So the victim mentality extends beyond
there.
Yeah, it goes beyond money, because you know what people attack you and me with, Romina, is then, oh, all you guys care about is money and everything like that. Well, let's see.
Right.
We're realist. Money is a tool for us, not a goal. We're realist.
Right.
Money is about the fact that it's like, you know what? Maybe you have no ambition and you have no desire to help other people. So you want to justify and virtue signal that you're comfortable being poor if you're happy and living a simple life, because it's a lie and a delusion you want to tell yourself to make yourself feel good, and you want to look virtuous, and you want to look better than us, because you think that you're better than us because you have an inferiority complex or you're insecure. Because here's the truth. Romina, I know you want to make a big contribution to the world. Audrey, I know you want to make a big contribution to the world. I damn well know I want to make a big contribution to the world. Settling for a simple, quote unquote, humble life is not acceptable to somebody who actually wants to make an impact on human suffering, who actually wants people other than their friends and family to do well. It's not acceptable for us to live in a world where we haven't made that happen. And therefore, we do extraordinary things and work hours that other people won't work and do things that other people won't do, because it is not acceptable to us to make a meager contribution, and we're not doing it for ego. We're doing it because that is something compelled in us, and there's a calling in us, and there's a desire to honor the gifts that we have instead of squander them selfishly or lazily, because we can coast and be idle and we can subsist and exist and not have a purpose beyond the function of I just want to live. A porpoise beyond the function of do you realize how sad it is to say, oh, well, I just want to exist. I'm for things like you. By the way, I'm for things like UBI, but I'm only really for that because I have an inclination and a personal belief that there is enough people that aren't lazy that
Right.
will say, now that I don't have to take a meager job because I'm backed into a corner to make enough money to live, I actually can figure myself out and figure out what to do with myself, and I can find a calling or a
Yeah.
purpose or do the thing that I was put on earth to do, or I can refine my skills, or I can put my family first if my contribution is that I want to raise children. Like, I would love for more people to be able to be stay-at-home parents, and if UBI accomplishes that, sure. But people who want to be stay-at-home parents aren't saying I just want to exist. They're saying they want to give everything they have to the betterment of their children.
Right. Which is admirable, by the way.
Absolutely. I think it's one of the most admirable things people can do, and I think we should subsidize it. I think that a $21 trillion economy should subsidize that.
So, Christopher in chat actually said something really great. This is in reference to like being given the opportunities, but still being either unhappy or digging your own grave, right? This was in reference to the lottery stuff that we were talking about earlier. So Christopher says it's a change of position, not a change of mindset, which is a very nice, concise way of.
If you have a losing philosophy, being given winners' resources won't help you. It won't save you.
Yeah, I mean,
a bad manager, a bad boss, a bad spouse, no amount of money fixes the actual fact that they're bad at something.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's essentially like getting someone like that and then putting them on the finish line.
Yeah, that's a horrible idea. Or elevating somebody who couldn't pass basic training to a leadership position. Like, geez. Like, you doomed everybody. Congratulations. That's why I don't believe, by the way, that's why I don't believe in this idea. Have you heard this latest nonsense? Let's elevate the employees and put them on the board and let them have a vote. How stupid is that? Do you want your coworkers to not have a job? You didn't earn that position. You don't know jack. You know boots on the ground stuff, which is great. Great. And I think that people should listen to boots on the ground, but I don't think anyone who's boots on the ground should be making the decisions like that because they can't see top level. They can't see top level. They can't see decisions that affect people past them. They can't see the ripples because they've not had the training. They've not had the consequences. They've not had the stakes. Not to mention, they're going to be in that boardroom and everyone's going to basically make them irrelevant because they're all going to use coded language and jargon that they all came up with. And that person's not going to know what the hell they're talking about. And they're just going to get indignant. And likely they're just going to get duped and tricked. And we're going to maintain the status quo. And the difference is, on occasion, if there's enough people to outvote the smart people who are there, the reality is that they'll make some great virtuous moral decision that bankrupts the company, and then you'll win the whole moral high ground to lose everyone their job. Congratulations.
Damn.
Sorry, you got me riled up there.
So what say you to all of this? Yes, you.
Yes, you, young one.
Dang.
Wow.
Here for the young one we must.
I think we'll probably wrap this up in just a few
Sure.
more minutes. So
We're actually on time.
If you have any last comments,
I
you
do
wanna
want to
say?
hear from Audrey on this.
All right.
I feel like my
well,
mind just went
I guess-
blank.
We put you on the spot.
I don't know.
Okay, so how? I mean, I guess she already kind of said how she feels about that earlier when I asked her.
Yes.
What are your experiences, Audrey, with people, and have people like kind of attacked you with their small-mindedness and from a position of like, you know, their experience overshadowing greater realities?
I mean, yeah. That's sort of the. I mean, one of the things I'm always careful about when I like talk to people, even in general in DMs and stuff, when they ask for like advice on their situation or whatever, like if you want to do something creative, it's like everyone's background and situation is different, so it's hard to like. You know, sometimes I don't feel like I can give advice because I literally don't know like how it's like in that country or whatever. But there's also, I find sometimes people are just kind of stuck in that mindset. Like even if I don't know much about this country or whatever, like one thing that pops up sometimes is there's no video people in blah blah country, and I'm just like, that does not seem physically possible. Like there has to be something, or there's online communities. It's just there's.
I grew up in small towns, so that helps me a lot with this. It's not the same, but my dad grew up in a poor country and he moved back there, so I have a little bit of a frame of reference. Not to mention I have friends and people in the community who live in some pretty rough countries, so at least I have some frames of reference. That helps a little.
Yeah.
Romina's traveled and is very worldly, so she has a lot of frames of reference.
I mean, just in general, like I think sometimes when people get stuck in the, like we were saying earlier, the victim mindset, and it's almost like they're trying to find, or they're so wrapped up in the negatives that it's hard for them to kind of like see past that. And I think a lot of people who are successful, especially in this space, kind of like they're always reaching for new things or like trying to use whatever resources they have to their advantage. So
fight or flight, you know. And then, but I also think these people would rather fight in a weird way. These people, if these people attacked their problems with the fervor they attack people that they think are privileged, they wouldn't have those problems.
Yeah.
So that's number one. One of the things I think, though, is the problem with the internet. The good news about the internet is that you can be in rooms with people that can help open your mind and change your mindset and your conversations. You guys have brought me around on a lot of things. You guys have challenged me on a lot of things. You guys have also made me more, in a way, more open and more passionate about my ideas, things that I otherwise, I mean, the things that I talk about with you guys in this podcast would literally be relegated, as you know, to DMs and single person conversations, and I would never express them as passionately or as openly if you guys didn't help me grow to be comfortable with that. And because a lot of these things, they rub some people the wrong way, or they make me less likable or whatever, or they make me sound quote unquote privileged by the woke folk. The woke folk, cancel him. It's like yeah, come up on
Roberto's over.
Yeah, you want to cancel me? You want to cancel me? You got to roll up on my block first, because we're Brooklyn, we don't play. So
oh my god, I should tweet something with Roberto's over party just for fun.
Yeah,
I'll add to that. But
you guys want me to throat punch people?
Just like
today.
stupid stuff too.
You guys want me to like? It's like, but you have to make it super ironic. Like, how dare you tell people that hard work matters? Like, how dare you tell people that actions have consequences? It has to be like super sarcastic. But the point that I wanted to make, kind of in ending here, is like, I think because this is actionable, this is helpful, maybe even to people here who feel a little. The good news about the internet, the bad news is that you can end up in these echo chambers that reinforce negative thought, negative behavior, and a victim mentality, and those neural pathways. Yeah, echo chambers, and those neural pathways are hard to break. But the good news is you could also decide to put yourself into places with people who will challenge you and will hold you to standards and will hold you accountable, but will also be willing to help you and to help you grow as a person, just like Audrey and Romina have done for me. And what happens in those situations is, we're human beings. You can hack your own psychology. You can put yourself around people who will make you do things you don't like and that you're scared of, that are good for you, and that you know, because you know you won't change on your own because you haven't done it all this time. If you know that, my philosophy, my beliefs, my identity, my group, my culture has produced failure for me, or suffering for me, or pain for me this entire time. Gee, if I can't physically supplant myself and get out of here, which would be the best thing you can do if you can do it, or if you could afford to do it. If you can't, which I couldn't when I was
get outside
younger.
help.
When I couldn't, I used the internet as my out. I lived in a small, rural, military, hyper conservative town. Like, not really fun to be a black nerd that's into art and classical music and science and anime and comic books. Not really fun. Like, not really fun for me. So what I went to the internet and I found the other nerds like me, and it was my saving grace. It rescued me. It gave me something to look forward to. It made me not feel like I had to conform to the people I was trapped in a room with. And so because I had that out called the internet, it saved me, literally saved me. And then when it came career time, like eventually, even with working a decent salary job in the same situation, the out was, there are people in California and New York who will actually pay me what I'm worth because they actually understand it. And that helped me. And people abroad as well. And that helped me. When I wanted to understand things and I wanted to challenge myself in my thoughts about the world, speaking to people from other cultures and countries through the internet helped me, because otherwise I would have had to deal with the bigoted belief systems of people around me.
Yeah,
And so
I had similar experience as well, but also because I am an only child, so basically it's just me, you know.
yeah,
And I think having access to other cultures, a different kind of community, you know, it gives you different perspectives, and then it also helps you, it pushes you to become a more well-rounded person, which is essentially will lead you to accomplish your goals and accomplish the things that you want to do, you know. I mean, it's like a very simple, it's a very simple but often challenging concept. Like, for instance, you're trying to quit smoking, stop hanging out with your friends who are chain smokers and keep offering you a cigarette, right? It's like that kind of thing. That's just a very literal thing. I don't actually just mean, you know, stop hanging out with your friends just because they have bad habits, but, you know,
well,
that kind of thing.
or maybe you
Or
do.
maybe, depending on what it is you're trying to do, right? That's just a very literal, tangible thing that is easy to visualize. But that can apply to anything, you know, where you can just use that as like an analogy of
I had to,
of
what I
this.
did is I didn't drop or discard these people because it feels callous to say or do that. But
Yeah,
I did limit my interactions with people,
right.
and I prioritized other people.
Yeah.
And that sounds unreasonable and sounds selfish to some people. I know there's like one or two people that we know that would say, oh, well, that's selfish, or that's you being selfish. No, that's you being kind to yourself. That's being kind to yourself. You're not obligated to give of yourself at the to your expense, to your detriment, to make other people feel good. And the thing is, we're trapped in a society that tries to tell you and shames you for simple acts of self-preservation, simple acts
Yeah.
of self-love, self-respect. Self-respect is something that, like, ironically, in a culture where we call people simps and where we call people all these other mean names and pejoratives and things like that. Ironically, the same people shouting all that and everything like that, if you had to grade them and you put them through a psych eval, you'd find them they themselves don't have a lot of self-respect. So a lot of these keyboard warriors, they'll sit there and immediately bash somebody else and look down on somebody else that they think has low self-esteem or low standards and everything like that. Funny story, they're projecting. And
I have some stuff to add on that, but I feel like we should save it for next time. Talking about
you sure?
relationships, maybe
Ooh,
like something like that.
okay,
Yeah, we'll figure that out.
okay.
Because I want to add to that, but I feel like if I do, we'll keep talking for the next 40
Yeah.
minutes.
I mean, the main
Just on
point of
that.
you and I talking about that was one of the first things to do is to find a new group and a new class of people to interject yourself in that will help you kind of
Yep.
rework your neural pathways. People who are more aligned to the person you wish you were.
And
They don't
that's
have to be,
exactly what I want to talk
and they don't have
about.
to be above you.
That's a
They
good
can be on the
topic.
same journey. Huh?
I'm gonna save it for next time because I have a system for this, and I'll show you guys.
Ooh.
I have a
Ooh,
spreadsheet.
that's good. I love that.
You got a spreadsheet for everything.
She does. Like, that's her superpower.
So
That's
that's like a
Romina's-
list of
that's her,
spreadsheets.
Oh, I need a spreadsheet for my spreadsheets.
You probably have one that organizes all of your spreadsheets in one place.
I mean, that wouldn't be a bad idea, but
Wow.
anyway, I think with that we'll wrap it up before my dignity keeps being shoveled into the ground.
In what way is your dignity being shoveled into the ground?
Audrey, you don't know. I see her eyes. She's looking at
Cutting
me.
those eyes at you?
So Roberto, if you can think about your outro while I keep
Okay.
Stalling.
No, I think I've gotten it out.
All right. Well, thank you guys for tuning in to the live stream. And for those of you who are listening as well, we're going to wrap this up. Don't forget to follow all of us and cue the intro.
The
outro. The intro outro.
Thank you for listening to the No Assembly Required podcast, a podcast where we talk about absolutely nothing and somehow manage to better your life anyway. This has been a live YouTube show brought to you by your host, the girl with a spreadsheet for everything, RedRomina. Your second host.
I want that to be my next intro.
The girl who will cut you with her eyes, and we've even made a meme about it. Audrey Ember.
Oh my god.
And by your dark eternal lord of the internet through whom all things are possible, Roberto Blake. This has been the No Assembly Required podcast, filmed in front of a live YouTube audience. No audience members were harmed in the filming and recording of this podcast, only the feelings of my co-host as per usual. Please follow us at youtube.com/noassemblypod. Also everywhere in social media at noassemblypod. And please continue to listen and to support in all of the podcast listening platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, and anywhere else podcast can be listened to or downloaded. We appreciate your support with those 5-star ratings and your very courteous reviews that we know are coming soon. And so this has once again been the No Assembly Required podcast. Again, no audience members were harmed in the filming and recording of this podcast. I promise, FCC, no one was harmed. You can quote me. NARP.